Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. Palantir on its way to $70. The bears that have been sitting on the sideline waiting for that $40 dip. I don't know if it's coming right now due to the fact that we do have a lot of acceleration that's happening with this stock. On top of that, we have Palantir that finishes in the green today on top of a market that actually is quite choppy. We saw a lot of flips and closing slightly in the red, mostly due to a larger tech kind of sell-off with some of the bigger tech stocks, Apple coming down, especially having a big weight on the NASDAQ. What we're going to be talking about is Palantir, important things that are happening with some of the companies that it's partnered or announced that it's collaborated with. We have earnings coming up, which is, of course, going to be talking about some uncertainty within this earnings report and why it's important. So before we get too far, we're on our way to 23,000 subscribers. Hit that sub button, like the video. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm collecting all the data and dispatching it to you. Now, Palantir Technologies, we pop it up on the screen here. It closes at 69.24. Remember, there was a big reversal that was triggered at 63 after Palantir was experiencing a decent pullback from when it was at these all-time highs of about 84. One important thing to know is on a technical perspective and a bullish perspective, if Palantir reclaims that $70 price target, and right now in the overnight hours on Robinhood, it's up about 30 cents, trading right now at 69.51. If it reclaims that $70 zone, there is a decent amount of consolidation that has occurred there. Just looking at history, Palantir had a few weeks of actually trading in the low to the mid 70s and holding that area. So if Palantir can get back in that area, that is a great spot, especially with some of the uncertainty with earnings that is coming up here February 3rd. That's going to be Monday, February 3rd, post market. Now, an important announcement here. Remember Anduril? They had announced with Palantir last month that they formed a consortium to advance AI capabilities for the U.S. military and security agency. Well, guess what? We have Anduril that came out here and announced a $1 billion AI military, this basically startup right here, factory in Ohio. Now, this closely held technology startup, what they do specifically is they work with autonomous systems and weapons for the military. And on Thursday, they announced plans to build a $1 billion factory. This is really great for the local economy in Ohio because it is saying it'll bring more than 4,000 jobs, and the facility will eventually produce tens of thousands autonomous systems, they say here, and different types of equipment every single year. Now, in addition, Palantir, one of the big things here is some analysts are starting to account for a controversial kind of area for what Palantir's earnings are truly going to report. Right now, earnings per share is sitting at 11 cents. That's what Wall Street is estimating it's going to be with revisions, with revenue estimates correlated at 776 million. And earnings per share revisions, we have 13 bullish ones in the last 90 days. Now, why this is starting to create a little more uncertainty is because Palantir, when it had that reversal, analysts are starting to account for more than this $120 million in stock compensation. We've talked about this before, the SARs. Those are the stock appreciation rights, which is basically a form of stock-based compensation, which began to vest when Palantir shares are worth $50 or greater in Q4 of 2024. A lot of people are saying that this is either it is or it is not incorporated into the analyst of the Q4 earnings, which means we could have a large fluctuation here. Raymond James right here, this analyst talked about revise a downward from an earlier prediction of 6 cents per share down to 1 cent per share. So we'll see what happens. I've seen many different sources that point fingers in different directions, that have their own opinions, that have their own arguments. We're only going to be able to tell in due time with what happens with this and how that's going to be reported. Hopefully Palantir comes out and makes an official announcement during that earnings call. Palantir right now is trading at a very high valuation. We do know this. Free cash flow has continued to grow, though, relatively well, 70% year over year. With it being at this very high price level and a market cap right now of about 157 billion, the risk for downside potential still remains quite high. Even though Palantir has had this incredible reversal that we've seen and starting to see buying pressure come in, does not change the fact that it is right now at a very high valuation. Nonetheless, the company is still continuing to grow very well and accelerate very well on both the commercial and the governmental side of things. However, if we see any miss with that SARS or stock-based compensation here, that's where I think we could see Palantir that could have a stronger pullback. So personally, looking at its price target, looking at Palantir right now, looking at entry points, I personally am just going to be waiting on the sidelines, waiting for Palantir to come down. Would I possibly miss the boat for Palantir to continue to rise? Of course. However, right now, it is just very highly valued, and the risk for downside potential is just a little more riskier than I am comfortable with. That's why it's always important to do your own due diligence out there. That's where we are with Palantir. The S&P 500 right here snaps a 3-day win streak as it just slightly closes in the red. You can see down about only 0.2%, and you have the NASDAQ down about 0.9%. Now, we're seeing some choppiness in the market. One of the big things that brought down the market, like I mentioned before, was Apple shares were down 4% after posting their worst day since August. You also have Tesla coming down more than 3%, and NVIDIA sliding nearly 2%. Now, the major averages gave up gains from earlier in the day. One of the other sectors of stocks that are doing quite well and doing very well because they smashed and beat their earnings are a lot of the bank stocks. We got Morgan Stanley here beating their expectations, up about 4%. Bank of America beating their estimates too. And you're also seeing other financial projections such as JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs also beating their fourth quarter expectations. So the banks are doing very well right now, and the earnings season is actually off to a strong start. With the heaviness that we're seeing in the markets, Wall Street right now, I think, is getting a little more hesitant on what's going to be happening with the interest rates. That's because the 10-year Treasury yield right here, it has remained relatively high. We did see a decrease recently after we had the CPI data that showed inflation was actually cooling. However, it's still remaining quite high, and I think this is continuing to bring some uncertainty to the market, due to the fact that the probability of those interest rate cuts in 2025 is still kind of nobody truly knows what the Fed's going to do. Right now, we're thinking about 2. Some people are talking about even 0. So we don't know. What we do know, though, is the economy is very resilient, and we're seeing inflation that, even though it is cooling, is still sticking around. And that is where we're seeing some profit taking and some selling pressure across the board. Taken together right here, there's a trio of different reports suggesting that the economy is nowhere near in a recession, which would actually, if it's nowhere near a recession, then it wouldn't make sense to cut rates a ton, but showing signs that we could be seeing signs of the slowing of inflation like I just talked about. Now, NVIDIA, interesting article I wanted to cover here. NVIDIA is doing fairly well at its price action. At about $133, we see it holding support. NVIDIA does have a strong support level at about that 130. So if we see any downward pressure, we could be seeing that support zone being tested. However, some article comes out here today predicting NVIDIA to become a $10 trillion company, saying, is it too late to buy NVIDIA stock? And basically what they're talking about is with the onset of the artificial intelligence boom and with the market capitalization that's expected to continue to trickle down and share into these AI stocks from a lot of the other big stocks that are out there. Outpacing the broader market, NVIDIA has been doing quite well. We know it is the key leader in GPUs that we just saw from the recent CES, the Consumer Electronics Show report, bringing out the 50 series, and NVIDIA's bringing, of course, their Blackwell chips. So financials are soaring as long as supply is not limited and we don't see a lot of supply constraints. The demand continuing to be there will hopefully keep up with supply, and in reflection there, financials will do very well. So NVIDIA, a lot of the also analysts out of 43 covering the stock, 36 right now still continue to have a strong buy even at these prices. Only 3 say it's a moderate buy and 4 say it's a hold. Average price target right now is $177. That's a 30% gain from where we are right now and would be a new record highs. What do you guys think about this with Palantir? Do you think it's going to cross $70? Other than that, peace out, take care, and I'll catch you guys later.